Okay, so we are in lesson 2.2, unit 2, which is about trigonometry, which we briefly talked about, but we're actually going to do a little bit of a throwback lesson. I know many of you probably learned this in grade 7, potentially grade 8, but we're going to look at the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so some definitions that you're going to need to remember. The first is a right angle. So if you remember, a right angle is an angle that is perfectly 90 degrees. And we put that little square in the corner so that we show that that signifies a 90-degree angle. The next definition you need to know is a right angled triangle. So just like that, we have a right angle, but if I connect, sorry guys, not with a ruler, which we should always use, but if we do a right angled triangle, it is a triangle with a right angle at it, okay? Then we're going to get into some other terminology here, the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is that side that is directly across from the right angle. So this longer side is called the hypotenuse, okay? Or if for short, if you want to just put HYP, that works as well, okay? But it's the side directly across from that right angle. And Pythagorean theorem is a relationship discovered by the Greek mathematician Pythagoras that in a right angle triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of squares of both of the other sides. And that can be used with these two formulas here. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or c squared is equal to a squared and b squared. And what that really looks like is if I had a right angle triangle, is if I labeled it A, B, and C, is that if I squared this number and I squared this one and this one, A squared plus B squared, so the side lengths squared should be equal to the hypotenuse squared, okay? And we're going to go back to looking at how we calculate this, but it's important to know that we're always going to use C as the representative of the hypotenuse, okay? So for this, it says calculate the length of the hypotenuse, and we're going to use, you can either use a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or you can put c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So I'll do both in either example here, but it says calculate the length of the unknown side. So unknown side being that of x and that of y, and round your answer to the decimal place if necessary, okay? So in this case, this would be A, this would be B, and this is C, because C is always the hypotenuse. So C is going to be the same as X here, and then A and B we can just label either way. So if we use C squared equals A squared plus B squared as our formula, we can just fill in what we know here. So C is actually X, so it'd be X squared equals A, which is 3 squared, plus B, which is, 4 squared. You see how we just took these numbers right here and we put them into these spots in the formula. Now we would have x squared equals 3 squared is 9 and 4 squared is 16. So x squared would be equal to 25. Now, you might be wondering, well, how do we find out x or what x is? Well, in the last lesson, we learned about powers and square roots. So the way we can get the base of something to the power of 2 or get rid of that is by doing a square root. So the square root of 25 is going to give us our answer to x. So it'd be x is equal to the square root of 25. And if we plug that on our calculator, it would be x is equal to 5. Or in this case, c is equal to 5. So we know that the answer here is 5 centimeters, and that is the unknown side length that we don't have. Okay? So hopefully you guys are getting this down. I'll hold up for a second in case some of you are writing this down by hand, and then I'll carry on with it. Okay, so for the next one, I'll use that second formula. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And in this case, we know that c is our hypotenuse, which is the longest side, or making sure it's across from that right angle triangle. And then we can label either side a and b. So we go to fill these numbers in for the certain values that we have. So a is going to be 7 squared plus b is 5 squared equals y squared. Okay. In this case, 7 squared, or 7 times 7, is 49, plus 5 squared is 25, is equal to y squared. And if we add both 49 and 25 up, we'd get 74, giving us y squared. And we know to get rid of this squared, we have to square root the answer 74. So in this case, y then, just going up here, is equal to 8.6 centimeters, or c being equal to 8.6 centimeters. And we make sure that we round to 1 decimal place, and we put the units, which is centimeters. So just make sure that you have all that up there. When you do have that, if you could just write in the chat that you're good, and I'll move on to the second page. Got to wait on a few more here, at least 4 or 5 more. If you're good and you have that all down, just write good in the chat, please, if you could. Just going to wait on 1 or 2 more. Remember, once you're finished copying that down, just write good in the chat. Again, all this information will be up on Google Classroom if you need to go back and take a look. Just waiting for 1 more. Good. Okay, so now we're looking at calculating the length of the non-hypotenuse side, okay? So not C, so one of the other ones, but not C. And in this case, it asks us to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it says calculate the length of the unknown side and round up your final answer to 1 decimal place. So we know that the side across from the right angle is always going to be C. And then we can just label A and B, either one. So I'm just going to go A here and B there. Our job now is to put A squared plus B squared equals C squared and fill in the different ones. So 13 is going to go into C, X is going to go into A, 5 is going to go into B. So then I would be X squared, because X goes into the A spot, plus B squared, B is 5 squared, equals C squared, which is 13 squared. And just like we did in the last unit, is we're going to try to isolate or keep our variables on one side. So our variable being x squared. So if we just go through this, 5 squared is 25 and 13 squared is 169. And we want to keep that x by itself, or x squared by itself, because we want to figure out what that's equal to. So we need to take that 25 or positive 25 and bring it to the other side. And when we do that, it becomes negative 25. So it's x squared is equal to 169 minus 25. And in this case, x squared would be equal to 144. And we know the opposite of to the power of 2, or squaring something, is the square root. So to get rid of that, we're going to square root 144, and x is going to be equal to 12. So therefore, A is equal to 12 centimeters, okay? And that would be our answer. All right, now the last one here. Once again, our job is going to be attribute values here. So the side across from the 90-degree angle is C, or the hypotenuse. And then we'll just go A and we'll go B. Just time wrong. And again, we're just going to sub in our values into each spot. So A squared plus C squared, or sorry, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And then we would have 5 into the A spot, so 5 squared, plus Z into the B squared spot, so Z squared, and 11 squared. So 5 squared is 25. Then we have Z squared. Then we've got 11 squared. It's 121. Remember, we want to keep this by itself. So what we need to do is move that positive 25 over. So it'd be Z squared is equal to 121 minus 25, which would give us Z squared is equal to 96. And again, we got to square root it to get Z, and Z being 9.79, which then we can round to 9.8 centimeters. So B is equal to 9.8 centimeters. Okay, that being our answer.